A marriage fraud case has put Chinese people across America in the hot seat. This is today's first big issue topic. Also, the WNBA, where the meaning of the word, women, is still unclear, has been a topic for a week now, and it's trending again today. Then there's the Wisconsin primary. The popular gubernatorial candidate Ms. Hum, that Korean-American woman, suffered a shock defeat. There's a mystery behind it. That's one of our topics for today. Furthermore, Canadian Prime Minister Carney surrendered to Trump, but Trump actually refused to accept it. What's going on there? All right, welcome to Good Morning America with Fan Wei. Welcome to the show. Hello to our YouTube viewers and greetings to our listeners on Sound of Hope, Silicon Valley FM 96.1. Okay, let's start with today's top trending news story. U.S. Attorney General Blanche announced yesterday that based on an investigation by the Southern District of New York, 11 Chinese individuals were indicted for a marriage fraud ring. They're accused of taking huge sums for over 1,000 sham marriages. This has shocked America and is all over the internet. So, what happened? This group has been operating since 2016 and was run by Chinese Americans with backgrounds from mainland China. 10 are U.S. citizens, and 1 is a green card holder. This operation continued until July of this year, making it a criminal network spanning nearly a decade. They were based primarily in New York City, but their business reached across the U.S. and even involved overseas groups. Here's how they did it. They ran ads on social media in China, claiming they could help people get U.S. green cards and legal status. Then, in the U.S., they recruited hundreds of American citizens to play along. As for the fees, they charged Chinese nationals about $100,000, then paid the American citizens who agreed to the sham marriage $30,000. This even included 14 U.S. service members. And so, their main clients were men from China. They arranged over 1,000 sham marriages in total, and collected tens of millions of dollars over time. So, what exactly did they do? They staged these elaborate, so-called sham weddings. Then, after that, they'd register the marriage and go on to forge joint bank accounts and tax records, making it all look very legitimate. Also, this sham marriage scheme included recruiting witnesses, lawyers, and various other roles. And then, of course, they had to sign prenuptial agreements, so their assets stayed separate. They lived apart after marrying, and so on, just to ensure that once the deal was done, they could go their separate ways. Now, all 11 people have been indicted by the Department of Justice. 10 were caught the morning it was announced. That is, they were arrested yesterday morning, and it was made public then. Attorney General Blanche said this is one of the largest marriage fraud cases in U.S. history. He also vowed that he would never allow anyone to defraud the U.S. immigration system. Currently, the status of those who already received green cards or citizenship has been revoked, and they will be deported. This news has also really shocked America. Why did it shock America? Maybe I don't know if you can guess why it shocked America so much. I think, in my view, it's because Americans couldn't imagine such tactics. It's jaw-dropping to them. So this surprise added to the newsworthiness and the buzz of this story. Because Americans can't imagine, like, how can people cheat like this, huh? But then, I think on the flip side, Chinese people from the mainland might feel Americans are naive and easy to trick, like fools, you know? This country is full of loopholes, like shoplifting, or what's called voter fraud during elections, and even, like, stealing immigration benefits, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, federal health insurance, and so on. And just by getting married, you can get a green card, and become a citizen. Isn't that just too easy? I mean, who doesn't know how to get married? So, that's why this fraud ring came about, right? But we all know, and I believe, that busting this one ring definitely doesn't mean it's the only one in the United States. It's likely just one player in the industry. In other words, it's just the tip of the iceberg, just one company in the whole industry chain. Sigh. But the problem is, honesty is the very foundation of America. Okay, so the most basic prerequisite for maintaining this country's prosperity, And its freedom is honesty, not just having a ton of laws. Because as I've told you, in the monuments to America's founding fathers, it says that the laws that really work in America are the laws of the heart. That is, using your own morality to guard yourself against doing bad things. A prosperous and free America is definitely not maintained by countless legal clauses. It's not. It's about everyone being a good person. And in an honest America, fraud is the fastest way to destroy the reputation of the Chinese community. So they did this and made money for 10 years, tens of millions of dollars. There's an old Chinese saying, what goes around comes around. Others are honest while you're cunning. You can only get away with it for so long. Once you're caught, you're finished. The key is, a few bad apples spoil the whole bunch. It actually ruins two things. One is the reputation of Chinese people, and second, it ultimately ruins this country. Because when Americans find out you can actually play it this way, some bad people will start to copy it. And what else? Then the good people in America will say, we can't do things based on honesty anymore. We have to tighten up. That's why the Save America Act was introduced. In America, there was never a need for the Save America Act before, because virtually everyone is honest. Everyone was in honest America. So, this whole thing, the shock in America actually represents harm to the Chinese community. Actually, many of us in America, including so many of our viewers, are not only well-educated and excellent at our jobs, but also law-abiding, love America, defend America, and cherish freedom. We aren't those kinds of people. But if we let them keep doing this, then in the end, everyone will suffer together. So I want to say, by reporting this news, I actually want to express a viewpoint. At a time like this, Chinese people, Chinese Americans, need to speak out and condemn this, to express our opinions. At the very least, I mean, why are you putting such a heavy burden on the reputation of Chinese Americans? I don't have the energy to carry that burden. I have my own things to deal with, and I agree with that. At the very least, I think Chinese Americans watching this show should do two things. First, leave a comment here and share your thoughts. It'll only take a minute or two. Second, write a letter or an email to your representative in Congress. You can just use ChatGPT. What should you write in the letter? Say, I love America. I condemn this behavior. I don't support it. And it doesn't represent who we are as Chinese people. Right, tell you what, once I'm done, I'll write a letter and post it in the community section. You guys should go check it out. There'll be a template there. But you don't have to use mine. You can just ask ChatGPT or any AI. By the way, I want to ask, how many of you here are using AI? Let's do a poll, shall we? To our editor, let's put up a poll asking, are you using AI today? If you are, let's see what the percentage is. Actually, it's very easy to write this letter with AI. You just explain in Chinese what you want to say, and it'll generate a letter for you. Okay, and of course, you'll need to include your own address and your real name. Okay, let's run a poll here. So I have another question, a deep yet simple one for everyone. Why is it always people from mainland China doing these things? Why don't people from Taiwan do it? Why don't Chinese people in Singapore do it? Why don't people from Hong Kong do it? At least, not the Hong Kongers of today. Why is that? Why do you think that is? I think the reason is, there's only one reason. It's because of the Chinese Communist Party. Now, you might say I blame everything on the CCP. What does this have to do with the CCP? What's your evidence? They might just be profit seekers. They may have no CCP ties at all. But what I'm saying is, the CCP has occupied China for 80 years, and it has destroyed China's faith, morality, and ethics. In an atheistic China, people have no moral qualms about being deceptive, so they'll do anything. It's not just this. Stealing technology from American companies, from military to tech, stealing from their own bosses to make money, it happens all the time. Every time news like this breaks, it damages the reputation of Chinese Americans. And these stories just keep coming out one after another. I haven't mentioned another major story today. It's not a national headline, but it's significant. The United States Heartland China Association arranged an internship program placing students from mainland China into U.S. congressional offices as aides. The thing is, This association collaborated with the Chinese People's Association for Friendship with Foreign Countries, which we all know as the CCP agency, and other related United Front organizations to bring students from mainland China into the U.S. Congress to serve as, what do you call them? Aides. Back when U.S.-China relations went so confrontational, these things seemed, well, they didn't seem to matter. But nowadays, all of these actions are viewed with extreme suspicion. So why did this so-called United States Heartland China Association do this? It's simple. The CCP gave the order, and they have the money. For them, it was easy money they couldn't pass up. The CCP gives money, and the US never cares, so why wouldn't I do it? Yeah, getting benefits from both sides. But once they start caring, it's too late for regrets, right? So really, I think things are just different now. As US-China relations enter a period of confrontation, anything helping the CCP is under suspicion. To be honest, things like fake marriages or working as a congressional assistant were common in pre-Trump America. No one even thought it was a big deal. It was just taking an opportunity, maybe a bit unethical, but could it really become the biggest marriage fraud case in US history? Is it really that significant? I don't think Chinese people could even imagine it. So, the tide has turned now, and once the US takes action, it'll be too late for regrets. So, of course, the damage caused is the title of my show today. A few bad apples spoil the whole bunch. There are 23 million Chinese people in Taiwan. Why don't they do things like this? 23 million is quite a lot, and the number of their students in the US is about 1/3 of those from mainland China. Yeah, it's not just 1/50th compared to mainland China. It's 1/3. There are many Taiwanese in the US, so why don't they do these kinds of things? It's simple, because they've kept the good Chinese traditions and morals, including things like being gentle, kind, and respectful. And of course, Taiwan and the US aren't in conflict either. But I think the root cause is the difference in moral standards. In an atheist society, atheist people dare to do anything. Actually, yesterday I recommended a trip to Taiwan. I suggest everyone go there. I think it's worth seeing what another Chinese society is like. I did that Taiwan trip segment yesterday, and I also mentioned the One Thought VPN. Then a viewer commented, saying they smelled too much commercialism, and if I keep this up, they won't like the show anymore. Well, let me tell you all. First, I understand your perspective. But second, I just want to say two things. First, the one-click VPN is for China's future, including our viewers. If not for you, then at least for your relatives, friends, and compatriots in China. This isn't for Fang Wei or this channel. It's for China's future. Second, the Taiwan trip is for Sound of Hope. This media outlet is the only private station today doing shortwave broadcasts to China. Among all Western governments, only one is left doing shortwave to mainland China, Voice of America. All other state-run stations have been shut down. So how does it survive? How do you maintain shortwave broadcasts to China? Why is shortwave to China important? Let me tell you why it's important. You might think few people listen to shortwave now since everyone uses cell phones, right? Well, one sign shows its importance. The CCP is still spending huge resources on shortwave jamming. If they weren't afraid, would they jam it? So how do we keep something like this going? I think we have to rely on our sense of public spirit to maintain it. Of course, I understand how you feel. I'll try to keep the ads as short as possible, but please bear with me. Okay, Sophie Cunningham, a player for the Indiana Fever, spoke publicly to the media, expressing support for protecting girls and banning transgender women, basically biological males, from participating in women's sports, which has sparked a huge controversy. Now, as for the WNBA, I'll just call it professional women's basketball, if that's all right. The coach of the WNBA's Minnesota Lynx and the Golden State Valkyries, which is California. Golden State just means California, you know. They've both expressed their support for transgender women participating in the sport. So basically, the two sides are at odds now. Now, the American Professional Men's Basketball League, they haven't said anything about this dispute. They haven't spoken out. At the same time, two male American stars, both NBA players. One is Cantor, and is Cantor Freedom, and the other is White, Royce White, made high-profile applications to join the WNBA draft, the draft. Well, as a result, the WNBA commissioner, their head, came out last Friday and said very seriously, we need to listen to all voices, and gather experts from all sides to figure out what a woman is. So, she also said the league will handle this topic in a thoughtful and respectful manner, and stay consistent with our league's long-term values, consistent. Now, what does that mean? I'll tell you later. She said, secondly, our player eligibility rules are different from other leagues and governing bodies. They're reached through collective bargaining. She said we reaffirm our belief in diversity and inclusion, emphasizing that, while also pointing out they won't be used as political pawns. Of course, first of all, this announcement that they're gathering experts to figure out what a woman is, this announcement really drew, well, it was actually mocked from all sides. Because does it really take this much effort to know what a woman is? Isn't this the simplest, most basic common sense in the world? What's even weirder is that a week later, today is another Friday. Then the commissioner came out and said, we have no conclusion. We still need weeks or months to find the answer. We need weeks or even months to find the answer. Such a big league can't figure out what a man is or what a woman is. What's going on here? Of course, let me explain. Let me interpret what she means for you. What she means is that we are this is called a bastion of revolutionary consciousness, meaning wokeness. I translate wokeness as revolutionary consciousness. We are the ultimate fighting bastion of revolutionary consciousness. I've told you before, 70% of the WNBA is black, and 35 to 40% is gay. Well, probably LGBTQ, not just gay. So, they can't agree with a common-sense definition of a woman. If they recognize the common-sense definition of a woman, it would be denying their political correctness and their ideology. So, when this commissioner says, she says we can't be used as political pawns, do you think you agree with what she's saying? Here's Feng Wei's commentary. I think she's already turned herself into a political pawn. And what she means is, we can't be used as the other side's political pawn in this political struggle. We only want to be a political pawn for this side, right? So, her so-called diversity, inclusion, and staying consistent with our long-term values, that's just the political stance they've already taken. And that stance is LGBTQ, all that stuff. So then, he's in a position now where he just can't deny that gender can be self-declared, yeah. Because if he denies this, he won't be able to stop Kent and White. He has no other way out. So, he's forced to do this, and the result is quite awkward, as they're pushing right in. So logically, no matter how many more months of meetings this commissioner holds, he won't find a way to exclude Kent and White while allowing other transgender, biological males to enter. Let's think for him. I spent a long time thinking about it with Henry yesterday. I said, let's think for him. Can we find any way to give him a path forward? Our conclusion was that logically there is no way. And indeed, after a week of discussion, there's still no way. Moving on, you know Royce White. He has already taken a very tough stance. He said, I'm definitely going to push through with my registration. He said he's already spoken with his legal team and believes his application will turn into a huge legal battle. They're already preparing for it. So what he means is, I'm definitely not just doing this for a laugh. I'm not going to let this go. If you don't get this common sense issue sorted out, then you might as well just let me in. He specifically said that once I'm in, I'm going to the Minnesota Lynx. Do you guys really like males that much? Then I'll come in. You really like transgender women? Well, I'm a transgender woman, so I'll be coming in. So that's another matter. It's very interesting. Again, this is news that Americans are very interested in. For Chinese people, I think it's at least worth knowing about. Okay, the next news item is important. What is it about? It's about the remaining controversies from Tuesday's primaries in Minnesota and Wisconsin. This DSA star, the Wisconsin state representative, Ms. Hom, ended up losing by 0.4%, 1 percentage point, 39.4 to 39.8. The opponent, this person is named Crowley. Oh, you say she lost, then she lost. But you should know that in the July 22nd poll, which is to say, less than half a month ago, in the Marquette poll, this is a mainstream poll, Hon was leading by a wide margin at 38%, compared to the 16% for the second-place candidate, Mandela Barnes. And Crowley, who beat her, had only 7% support just 15 days prior. 38-7, so everyone thought she was definitely going to win. Her lead over the opponent was 20-something percentage points, 31 percentage points. So from a 31% lead to losing, what exactly happened here? The result was, of course, she lost. Regardless, she lost. The votes were counted on August 11th. David Crowley, the Milwaukee County executive, won against Francesca Hahn by less than 1 percentage point, actually a 0.4% margin. Because if the margin is found to be less than 0.25%, there has to be a recount. But if it's greater than 0.25, there's no need, so it's settled. So what is this? This is just a dramatic collapse. So the media is using the term upset to describe it. And some headlines are calling it a shocking defeat for progressives. This is about a major defeat for the DSA's Socialist Party. So, the first question this raises is, it's very strange. What happened? Was it a setup? Of course, there's a reason for this. Because the Democrats are worried that their stance will lose to the Republican nominee in the November election. Because the Wisconsin governorship is something Democrats never lose. It's a so-called ironclad seat. If they lost it to the other side because of Hong, that would be disastrous. Of course, there's no evidence that this was a setup. I should clarify that I don't have any proof. I'm just talking about rumors online, including Sean Hannity on Fox News, who raised the same question on his primetime show, asking if it's possible. On the other hand, there's another possible explanation. The Democrats quickly consolidated at the last minute. This includes Mandela Barnes, who was in second place, dropping out before the election due to misconduct allegations. And another candidate, the Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rozwadowski, also dropped out because of a campaign finance scandal. Then, Governor Tony Evers, who wasn't running, decided at the last minute to endorse David Crowley, whom I mentioned earlier. All these factors eventually led to Hong's defeat, and Crowley won. But this victory ensured that the Wisconsin governorship stayed in Democratic hands. So what really happened? What do you think? Especially for our viewers in Wisconsin, why don't you tell us how you feel about it? Leading by 31 points and then losing by 0.4%. What's going on? I'll just offer two theories. If it really was a setup, it means the Democratic leadership was too worried that if the DSA won the primary, they couldn't beat the Republicans. If it wasn't a setup, then it's even weirder. It means Democratic voters, at the very last minute, still didn't want the DSA. But it's hard to say, because in polls, it's tough to filter for only Democratic voters. Even so, he was leading 38-7%. Yet in the actual election, where Democrats vote, there was such a massive reversal. It's really hard to explain. That's why these questions are being asked. Okay, that's one aspect. Secondly, let's look at another side of this. Now the DSA is starting to completely change its tune. Their previous socialist platform is what we'll call version 1.0, and next we might see version 2.0. What is version 1.0? Version 1.0 was very aggressive. If they won, their political agenda was to abolish the US Senate, the presidency, the police, IC, and even Thanksgiving. As a result, saying things like that really scared the living daylights out of Americans. So if they kept that up, they wouldn't win anything on November 3rd. Now they're walking it all back because it's box office poison. By box office, I don't mean movies, of course. I'm talking about votes. It's electoral poison. So, indeed, I've always observed that the DSA pushed too hard. Pushing too hard will lead to their own demise and take the Democratic Party down with them. So, one possibility is that the Democrats will take drastic measures to pull back and find a way. And, secondly, they have to pull back themselves. Okay, but I think if these changes happen, I'm warning everyone to be vigilant. Communists are communists, and they never change. Fraud, well, for them, it's something they do without any psychological burden. I'll tell you all about it now by reading a passage. I've read this before. It's from The Naked Communists, written by Professor Skousen and his son. In the United States, starting in the late 1950s, it was the Bible of the Cold War. It explains the behavioral traits of the Communist Party. I'll read it, and you can see if you agree. Since many viewers are from mainland China, they understand the Communist Party very well. This is how Americans understand them. He says communists see themselves as products of the material world, so they don't have any specific role. They believe they have no soul, and certainly no way to make a soul immortal. They don't believe in a creator either. Humans are just random products of the natural world, and there's no noble purpose to life. Because they lack morality, communists handle issues very bluntly. Self-preservation is the only reason for their actions. As for the motives of others, they always interpret them as either stupidity or selfishness. To them, signing 53 treaties and then violating 51 of them isn't a betrayal of trust. It's a strategic necessity. Hiding the truth to deceive others' minds isn't fraud either, but a necessary way of governing. Any unscrupulous expedient isn't evil either. It's just their strategy. So, all the honor and ethics that humans use to maintain harmonious relationships, they completely disregard. I don't know if you agree with this passage. If you do, right? Agree. If you don't, right? Disagree. Yeah, if you feel it's 50-50, please leave a comment and let me know. This is how Americans understand the Communist Party. Personally, I certainly agree. I think this explains how the DSA, well, they charge forward and then pull back. They really move in and out with ease. It also explains the marriage fraud we just mentioned. The society ruled by the Communist Party in mainland China has produced godless and atheistic Chinese people. They dare to do anything, and they do it all. That's why they created this thing that, to them, is completely insignificant, but has become the largest marriage fraud case in US history. This is the difference in values. So communism is truly a tumor on humanity. If you don't deal with it, it will spread like cancer cells. So, people with a conscience and a sense of justice must take action. Otherwise, never mind ourselves, your descendants will have no future. I've been making this appeal constantly. I hope you don't get tired of it, because I truly feel this is one of the reasons I do this show. I do this show because I feel there's a logic behind it, and it has value. Alright, next, let's talk about two slightly lighter news stories. They're quite interesting. The US Army versus Ukrainian drones. Do you know what the outcome would be? This is a very interesting piece of military news. It happened between April and May of this year, but the Wall Street Journal just reported it, because a lot of military news can't come out immediately, as it involves military secrets, and so on. So, what's the situation? The US Army Europe and Africa Command, starting in 2013, has for 13 years regularly held a multinational NATO military exercise once or twice a year in Hohenfels, Germany. Its name is Combined Resolve, the Combined Resolve exercise. So, it mainly involves several thousand troops from various NATO countries in a brigade-level combat exercise. What does that mean? It means they conducted offensive and defensive operations as a brigade unit, led by the United States military. Over a dozen allies and partners took turns participating. The goal was to train multinational forces on how to fight a high-intensity modern war together. As a result, from April to May of this year, a battle was fought. It was the United States 3rd Armored Brigade against the 3rd Armored Brigade of the 1st Cavalry Division against the 412th Regiment of the Ukrainian Drone Unit. A brigade against a regiment. One side had drones, the other was an armored brigade. In the end, the Ukrainian drone regiment first used reconnaissance drones to locate the enemy's tanks, which they found quite easily. Then, they launched attack drones and the famous FPV drones to strike the United States armored units. The exercise lasted for 2 weeks, and basically, in a very short amount of time, the United States armored units were completely destroyed. Of course, it certainly wasn't live ammunition. The 2-week exercise ended in a crushing defeat. The U.S. military then adjusted tactics, dispersing tanks, improving camouflage, and boosting electronic warfare. While these changes helped, they still couldn't fully withstand the Ukrainian drone attacks. This exercise exposed the current inadequacies in the United States' anti-drone measures. It forced the United States and NATO forces back to the drawing board to quickly address their own weaknesses. But the point of this news isn't about how the United States forces fared against Ukraine. It's about Russia. Because if the world's most elite United States Army armored units can't defend against Ukrainian drones, how can a third-rate Russian army cope? So, this also tells us what the future prospects of the Russia-Ukraine war might look like. Hey, what are your thoughts? Leave a comment. Up next, after arguing for over a year, Carney is about to surrender. What's the situation? Canada's PM Carney clashed with Trump. Trade frictions erupted between the two sides. He urged Canadians to boycott American goods, raising tariffs and pulling U.S. products and liquor from shelves. This responded to U.S. retaliatory technical tariffs. He also led a coalition of middle powers to resist the U.S., personally visiting China to discuss business and introduce Chinese EVs to Canada, becoming one of only 2 governments globally to oppose the Trump administration. Who was the other government? It was the CCP. What was the result? The latest news is that Carney has yielded. But as for Trump, it said that Carney knelt down, but Trump didn't reach out to help him up. In other words, his yielding was useless. The United States still won't agree. What's going on? Okay, let's first talk about the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA, which expires in July. The United States government has decided not to renew it. President Trump then issued an ultimatum. On August 19th, which is less than a week from now, he'll start imposing a 50% punitive tariff on Canada. This measure isn't afraid of the Supreme Court because it uses Section 232. Canada discriminates against U.S. trade with retaliatory tariffs and favors Europe. Thus, a 50% tariff is both reasonable and legal.